I can still remember the exact moment it happened, down to the smell of burnt coffee lingering in the break room. It was a Wednesday morning. I had just finished preparing the quarterly reports when I noticed unfamiliar footsteps echoing through the hallway. Sharper, louder, confident but not the good kind. I glanced up from my desk. And there he was, Zach, the founder's son. He was barely 30, dressed in an overpriced designer suit that looked like it was trying too hard to convince everyone he was ready for this role. Spoiler, he wasn't. The ink on his MBA was probably still drying. His father, Mr. Carter, had built this company from the ground up over 4 decades. Sweat, sacrifice, late nights, all of it. And I'd been here nearly 25 years, longer than Zach had even been alive. Zach sauntered toward me, not with a smile, not with a greeting, just that smug half grin you'd expect from someone who mistakes arrogance for competence. "Ellen," he said, folding his arms like some corporate superhero. "Come to my office, now." Not please, not even can you, just now. A strange chill crept down my spine. Something was off. I followed, clutching my notebook, trying to convince myself this was just a misunderstanding. Maybe he wanted an update on the financial forecasts. Maybe. But deep down, something told me. I knew. The moment I stepped inside, he didn't even offer me a chair. He turned, leaned against his father's old oak desk, the same desk I'd seen Mr. Carter sit behind hundreds of times with humility and grace, and said, like he was commenting on the weather, "This isn't going to take long." Then came the words, "You're irrelevant." I blinked. "Excuse me?" A slow chuckle escaped his lips, the kind that crawls under your skin. "Look, no hard feelings, but you're from a different era. We're moving in a new direction, faster, smarter, leaner. You've been here too long. You're comfortable. That's not what this company needs anymore." I stood frozen. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misheard him. Maybe this was a joke. A bad one. But the dead look in his eyes told me otherwise. "You're firing me?" He smirked wider. "Exactly. Pack your things. Security will escort you out within the hour." My fingers tightened around the notebook in my hands. I could feel the blood draining from my face. I wasn't just a random employee. I was the senior contracts manager. I had written most of the operational contracts this company still depended on. I had been the one who navigated us through the 2008 financial crash, the one who secured the 3 biggest clients still paying our salaries. And yet, here he was, this child in a suit, throwing me out like I was a broken stapler. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat. "On what grounds?" I managed to ask, keeping my voice steady. His answer? A lazy shrug. "It's called restructuring. Look it up." I stood there, chest pounding. My mind raced through every emotion. Anger, disbelief, humiliation. A million things I wanted to say, to shout even. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. Not because I wasn't shattered, but because I suddenly realized something. He didn't know. He had no idea. Without another word, I turned, walked out of his office, and straight past the gawking stares of my coworkers. Some whispered. Some didn't dare look at me. But none of them stepped forward. I didn't blame them. In corporate life, self-preservation is currency. Back at my desk, I packed slowly. Mechanical, phone charger, family photo. That little ceramic mug from the company's 15th anniversary party. Ironic now. And as I slid the drawer shut for the final time, I glanced over at the glass wall of the boardroom. Zach was inside, shaking hands with a group of investors, smiling, pretending to be something he wasn't. I walked out of that building with my head held high. Not because it didn't hurt, not because I wasn't angry, but because I knew something Zach didn't. There was a clause. A very specific clause. Hidden, subtle, but ironclad. inserted into the contract with our biggest client 5 years ago, at Mr. Carter's request. Back then, after a botched negotiation nearly sank the company, Mr. Carter asked me to draft a provision. It stated that only I, Ellen Walker, had the legal authority to negotiate, renew, or modify the agreements with that client. Without me, the contract was void. Completely. And Zach? He hadn't read it. Not yet. As I sat in my car, hands trembling, staring at the steering wheel, one thought drowned out everything else. Let's see how cocky you are tomorrow, Zach. I didn't have to wait long, because the next morning, the call came. And when it did, the very first words I heard were not a greeting. It was Mr. Carter, and he was roaring. Do you even know who she is? Read the contract. Right. Now. My phone buzzed again. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the answer button. Mr. Carter, the founder, the man who built the company from nothing, a man I respected more than anyone in my professional life. I took a deep breath and pressed answer. His voice hit me like a thunderclap. Ellen, why the hell am I hearing that you've been fired? There was no warmth, no politeness, just raw fury, barely restrained. For a moment, I was silent. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I didn't even know where to start. Your son, I said quietly. Zach. He told me I was irrelevant. A sharp inhale. Then an explosion of noise. Papers slamming, drawers yanked open, the sound of footsteps pounding across hardwood floors. Irrelevant? Irrelevant? I winced, pulling the phone slightly away from my ear. Then, the words that would mark the beginning of Zach's unraveling. Do you even know who she is? I could practically hear the veins popping in Mr. Carter's neck. He wasn't just angry. He was stunned. Betrayed. The son he'd trusted to carry on his legacy had made a move so catastrophically stupid, it left him breathless. Read the contract, Mr. Carter growled at someone in the background. Read the contract right now. A pause. Then muffled voices. Papers flipping. The tension on the other end of the line thickened into something suffocating. Then, absolute silence. Long, heavy, deafening. I stayed perfectly still, gripping the steering wheel of my car, parked right outside my apartment building, heart pounding so loudly I thought it might echo through the phone. And then, a different voice. Zach's. Low, uneven, shaky. What is this? Mr. Carter didn't even try to contain himself. You didn't read it, did you? You arrogant fool. You walked in here thinking you knew everything, and you didn't even read the fine print. Another shuffle of papers, more silence. Then Zach again. His voice cracked now. It says she's the sole authorized negotiator on the Dalton account. No modifications, no renewals, no discussions without her signature. Correct, Mr. Carter spat. Correct, because 5 years ago, after your bright idea to negotiate without legal review nearly cost us $8 million, I told Ellen to draft that clause. For protection. And now? I could hear him slamming something, his hand probably on the desk. You fired the one person holding together our most lucrative contract. The contract that accounts for over 30% of our annual revenue. Zach stammered. I didn't... You didn't think. That's the problem. The call went quiet for a moment. Then Mr. Carter came back directly to me. Ellen, where are you right now? I cleared my throat. At home, waiting to see how this unfolds. A deep sigh. The sound of a man realizing the depth of the hole his own son had just dug. Ellen, I am so deeply sorry for what my son did. And I need you. I need you to come in. Immediately. Dalton's renewal meeting is at 10. If you don't show, the entire deal collapses. A strange mix of emotions swirled in me. Part of me wanted to let it burn. Let Zach face the consequences of his ignorance. Let Mr. Carter see just how wrong his decision had been to hand the reins to someone so profoundly unqualified. But another part of me, the part that had dedicated 25 years to this company, that had built relationships, that took pride in the integrity of my work, that part wasn't ready to see it all go up in flames. I paused, then spoke, carefully. "I'll consider it," I said, "but not without conditions." Silence again, then a low, measured response. "Name them." My hand stopped trembling. "I want everything in writing," I said. "My role, my authority, my job security. And I want Zach nowhere near me, nowhere near my department, no power over my work." "Zero done," Mr. Carter said without hesitation. "And one more thing," I added, voice sharp now. "I'm not walking through the employee entrance." A chuckle. Dry. Tired, but genuine. Fair enough. I hung up and sat in my car for a moment longer, watching the morning sun hit the edge of the high-rise where I had spent more than half my professional life. Then my phone buzzed again. 3 missed calls, all from Zach. I didn't answer. The 4th buzz was a text. I glanced down. "Ellen, this was a misunderstanding. Let's be professional about this. We need you back. Call me." I smiled. A slow, satisfied, deliberate smile. No apology, no accountability, just panic, disguised as professionalism. I pocketed the phone, stepped out of the car, and straightened my jacket. Because today I wasn't just going back to work. I was going back on my terms. And something told me, Zach had no idea just how bad this day was about to get. By the time I arrived at the office, it was just after 9:30 a.m. But this time, I didn't park in the employee lot. I pulled right into the visitor's entrance, the front circle usually reserved for board members and VIP clients. I stepped out of my car, heels clicking against the marble pavement, head high, heart steady. Every step felt different. I wasn't walking in as someone begging for her job back. I was walking in as someone who suddenly remembered her worth. The receptionist, a young woman named Claire, jumped up the second she saw me. Her eyes widened. Clearly, word hadn't gotten to her yet. "Ms. Walker, I wasn't expecting..." I offered a polite smile. "Mr. Carter is expecting me. You can let him know I'm here." She nodded so fast I thought her head might fall off. "Yes, right away." Behind me, I could already feel it, the subtle shift in the atmosphere. Heads turning, conversations pausing mid-sentence, fingers freezing on keyboards. I stepped into the elevator without waiting for an escort. As the door slid closed, my phone buzzed. Another message from Zach. "Ellen, please respond. You can't just ignore this. We're all on the same side here." I chuckled under my breath. "The same side?" "Sure. That's rich." The elevator dinged, and as the doors opened, I walked straight into the executive floor, normally a place I'd only be summoned to for high-level contract meetings. Now, I was here by invitation, on my terms. At the end of the hallway stood Mr. Carter. He was waiting, and he wasn't smiling. His face was tense. He looked tired, ashamed even. "Ellen," he nodded. "Thank you for coming." I gave a polite nod but didn't extend my hand. Let him feel the distance. Let him know this wasn't business as usual. "Let's talk in my office," he gestured. As we stepped inside, I noticed immediately. Zach was already there, sitting in the corner, pale, jaw tight, shoulders tense. His phone sat face down on the table, his fingers fidgeting against it like it was some kind of lifeline. The moment he saw me, his expression shifted, like a man watching the gallows being built for him. I didn't look at him. Not once. Mr. Carter closed the door behind us and took a deep breath. "Ellen," he began, "I want to start by saying this. What happened yesterday was unacceptable. I should never have allowed Zach to act with unchecked authority. That was my mistake." I remained silent. Let him talk. Let him stew in it. "You are not irrelevant," he continued, voice softer now. You are one of the most valuable people this company has ever had. Zach shifted uncomfortably in his seat but said nothing. Mr. Carter pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk toward me. Your new contract. As we discussed, Director of Strategic Partnerships. Effective immediately. Full authority over the Dalton account and all related contracts. No interference. From anyone I opened it, scanning quickly. My lawyer would review it later, but even at a glance, it was solid. My terms, my protections, my autonomy. I nodded once. Accepted. Then, for the first time since I walked in, I turned and looked directly at Zach. You tried to erase me, I said quietly, evenly. But you didn't read the fine print. His eyes darted away. You thought you could walk in here, wave around your last name, and undo 25 years of work, relationships, and trust with the stroke of a pen. Ellen, look, he started. No. I cut him off, voice sharper now. You don't get to speak. You don't get to explain. Not to me. I turned back to Mr. Carter. The Dalton meeting is scheduled in 20 minutes. I assume we're still going forward? He nodded quickly. Yes, Mr. Dalton's team is already in the conference room. Good, I said. Then we don't have time for pointless apologies. I stood, straightened my jacket, and headed toward the door. But just as I reached for the handle, Mr. Carter's voice stopped me. Ellen, he said quietly, after this meeting, we'll need to talk about the future. I paused. Of the company, he added. Then, more pointedly, and about Zach. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Because as I opened that door, what I saw confirmed everything I already knew. The hallway was lined with people, employees who had heard the rumors, the whispers, the fallout. Some pretended to be busy. Others just watched. And when I walked toward the conference room, it wasn't with the cautious, careful steps of someone begging for a second chance. It was the stride of someone who knew. She was the reason this place hadn't fallen apart already. I glanced sideways through the glass wall of the conference room. There sat Mr. Dalton and his team, waiting. On the other side of the glass, pacing like a caged animal, Zach. His face wasn't smug now. It was pale, tight, panicked. And as I opened the conference room door, I watched him stop mid-pace, jaw locking, eyes widening. Because in that moment, he realized something. This wasn't his company anymore. Not in any way that mattered. The moment I stepped into the conference room, the atmosphere shifted. Not just for me, but for everyone sitting at that polished mahogany table. Mr. Dalton, a stern man in his late 50s, turned immediately. His expression softened when he saw me. His two senior advisors, Lena and Mark, exchanged glances but nodded in acknowledgement. Ellen, Mr. Dalton said, standing slightly. Good to see you. I offered a polite, measured smile. Thank you for waiting. His eyes narrowed for a brief moment. I was starting to wonder if, well, you know. His gaze flicked toward the glass wall, toward Zach, who was still pacing outside like a shark denied the water. Oh, I know, I replied calmly, sliding my files onto the table. But rest assured, we're proceeding as planned. Mr. Carter entered a moment later, closing the door behind him firmly. He nodded at the Dalton team, but avoided looking at his son entirely. Apologies for the confusion, he said. There's been internal restructuring. A diplomatic way to phrase, my son tried to tank the company. Mr. Dalton raised a skeptical brow. We've been doing business together for, 13 years now? And yet, when we arrived this morning, someone told my team that Ellen no longer worked here. I glanced at Mr. Carter, giving him the space to fix what his son had broken. His jaw tightened. That information was inaccurate. Ellen remains the sole authorized negotiator for this contract, as per the terms we all agreed upon 5 years ago. Dalton's eyes flicked to me. So that clause was real. I gave him a slight nod. Very real. Lena leaned forward. I assume then the rumors about changes in leadership are also inaccurate. I kept my expression perfectly neutral. We are here to discuss the future of this partnership. Everything else is noise. Dalton cracked a grin. Glad to hear it. Outside the glass, I caught sight of Zach, still pacing, phone pressed to his ear. His face was red, his movements frantic. He was watching, but he couldn't come in. He had no authority here, not today, and he knew it. Let's begin, I said, flipping open the final draft of the contract renewal. As discussed in our previous correspondence, the terms have been adjusted to account for the increased logistics costs on your side. For the next 40 minutes, it was business. Precise, professional. Exactly the kind of high-stakes negotiation I'd handled dozens of times before, but never with quite this much on the line. Every glance from Mr. Dalton carried an unspoken question. Is this company stable? Are they still the partner we trust? Every line of the contract was a chance to reassure him that, yes, we were. Or rather, I was. Mr. Carter mostly stayed silent, observing, occasionally nodding. It was clear, even to the Dalton team, that this wasn't his show anymore. Not in this room. This was mine. As we neared the close, Mr. Dalton leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen against his notebook. I have to admit, he said, voice low but firm. When we heard Ellen was out, we were already preparing to walk. Mr. Carter flinched but said nothing. Dalton continued. But seeing her here, knowing she's still handling this, that makes all the difference. He clicked his pen shut and smiled. You have a deal. Relief didn't hit me like a wave. It was quieter than that. More like the tension in my chest slowly releasing, inch by inch. We stood, shook hands. Lena and Mark followed suit. By the way, Dalton added as he gathered his things, you might want to tighten your chain of command. Chaos isn't a good look. Mr. Carter nodded stiffly. Understood. As the Dalton team filed out, I walked them to the elevator. Lena paused before stepping in. Ellen, she said quietly, if things ever change around here, you call me. Seriously, you deserve better than this circus. I smiled, genuine this time. Thank you, Lena. I'll remember that. As the elevator doors closed, I turned back toward the conference room, just in time to see Zach storming toward me. His face was twisted, anger, panic, disbelief, all rolled into one. You just had to make me look bad, he spat, voice low but shaking. I tilted my head, completely calm now. Zach, you did that all by yourself. He opened his mouth to respond, but a voice cut through the hallway before he could. Zach. It was Mr. Carter. His tone was cold. Final. My office. Now. Zach looked like he wanted to protest, but one look at his father's face told him better. I watched as they disappeared down the hall, the tension between them so thick it felt like the air itself might snap. For a moment, I stood there alone. 25 years, 2 hours of negotiations, and everything had changed, or was about to, because the Dalton deal was secure. But I knew this wasn't the end, not even close. Zach wasn't the kind of man who accepted defeat quietly, and something in Mr. Carter's face told me a reckoning was coming. I straightened my jacket, exhaled slowly, and headed back toward my desk. But I couldn't shake the feeling. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. For the next few days, the office felt different. Not just because the Dalton deal was signed, not even because Mr. Carter had made it clear. I was back, with more authority than before. No, the change was something less visible, but more chilling. People were watching me. Some smiled when I passed. Quiet, cautious smiles. The kind that said, glad you're back, but we're keeping our heads down. Others couldn't even meet my eyes. Their conversations dropped to whispers the moment I stepped into the hallway. You could almost feel it in the air. An electric tension, like the entire building was holding its breath. Zach wasn't pacing anymore. But he wasn't gone either. His office door stayed shut most of the day, but every now and then I'd catch glimpses. Him slipping into closed-door meetings with a few department heads, leaning over someone's desk, whispering, sometimes laughing, but never looking in my direction. I knew that laugh. I'd heard it before, right before he fired me. And something told me he hadn't accepted his defeat. Not really. The first sign came on Thursday, an email from Dalton's logistics coordinator. Simple, polite, but off. Ellen, just confirming, you requested the shipment schedule be pushed back 2 weeks? Seems unusual given the contract terms, but happy to proceed if that's the case. My stomach dropped. I hadn't sent that request. Not even close. I pulled up my sent folder. Nothing. I checked the email thread. Sure enough, there it was. An email with my signature, my exact formatting, my closing line, best Ellen, everything. Except I didn't write it. A cold chill spread across my back. I forwarded the message to Dalton immediately. This request was not sent by me. Please disregard until we clarify internally. Dalton responded almost instantly. Understood. Figured something was strange. Let us know. Crisis averted. For now. But I knew what this was. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a glitch. It was a warning. The second sign came the very next day. I opened my expense dashboard to approve the travel reimbursement from the Dalton meeting. Denied. Flagged for unauthorized travel. I stared at the screen, stunned. That had never happened before. I had never, not once, had an expense report denied in my entire 25-year career. I clicked into the notes. Per updated policy, reimbursements require pre-approval from the executive office. ZC Zach Carter. I clenched my jaw. This wasn't about money. This was about sending a message. You might have won the Dalton deal, but I'm still here. By Monday morning, it was undeniable. A spreadsheet I'd submitted to finance, one I knew was accurate, came back riddled with errors, numbers swapped, columns misaligned, my name tagged with a note. Multiple inaccuracies found in data provided by Ellen Walker. Please verify before use. It was subtle. It was careful. It was textbook corporate sabotage. Nothing loud. Nothing that would trigger a formal complaint on its own. But enough that over time it would chip away at something far more valuable than my job. My reputation. I knew exactly what this was. I'd seen it before. Years ago at my first job. A senior manager who couldn't confront problems head-on. So he'd start quietly closing doors around you. Deny resources. Remove your access. Flag your work with false errors. Isolate you. And then, when you were sufficiently exhausted, when the mistakes, real or fabricated, stacked up high enough, he'd smile across the table and say, "It's probably best if you moved on." But I wasn't 24 anymore. And I wasn't naive. Not this time. I started documenting everything. Every flagged expense, every falsified error, every email discrepancy, screenshots, backups, time-stamped folders. I created a private log on an encrypted drive, noting dates, times, exactly who was copied, and who wasn't. And I wasn't subtle about it either. When IT sent me a vague ticket request about suspicious logins under your account, I responded by CCing Mr. Carter. When finance questioned my numbers, I pulled the original spreadsheet from my version control system, showing it had been accurate when I submitted it. Every step Zach made, I matched with quiet precision. And every time I CC'd one more person, legal. Then, on Wednesday afternoon, came the moment that shifted everything. I was walking past the small meeting room by the east hallway when I heard voices. Loud, frustrated. Zach's. She's unstable. Ever since she came back, she's been aggressive, erratic. I don't think she's fit to handle major clients anymore. A second voice. Someone I didn't recognize. Probably one of the newer executives. But She just closed Dalton. I mean, under serious pressure. Zach scoffed. She got lucky. We can't run a company on luck. My hands tightened into fists. So this was the plan. Poison the well. Whisper it long enough, loud enough to anyone who would listen until doubt spread. Until it wasn't about a contract clause anymore. It was about whether I was a liability. That night, I sat alone in my apartment staring out at the city skyline. I wasn't angry. I was done being angry. Now, I was focused. This wasn't just about Dalton, or about getting fired. This was about every late night I had worked, every weekend I had sacrificed, every time I had fixed someone else's mess without getting credit. And no, I wasn't going to let someone like Zach Carter erase me. Not quietly, not ever. By Thursday morning, something felt different. The hallway chatter wasn't the usual cautious whispering. It was heavier, tense. The kind of tension that sinks into the floorboards, into the air itself. People weren't just watching me anymore. They were waiting for something to break. And then, an email. Subject, mandatory meeting, Executive Audit Committee. From Mr. Carter. Time 10 a.m., Boardroom A. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. Audit. The word alone sent a chill through the office. It wasn't a word you tossed around lightly. Not unless things were serious. Very serious. At 9:55, I made my way toward the executive boardroom. The hallway was lined with faces, some pretending to check their phones, others blatantly staring. Everyone knew this wasn't just a normal meeting. When I stepped inside, the room was already half full. Mr. Carter sat at the head of the table, face unreadable. Next to him were two internal auditors, David, the lead, and Monica from compliance. Their laptops were open, a folder thick with documents between them. Zach was there too, slouched in his chair, arms crossed, his foot tapping against the leg of the table like a man holding back a panic attack. When he saw me walk in, his face tightened. He tried for that arrogant smirk he always wore. But it flickered, faltered, because even he knew this wasn't going to go his way. Thank you, everyone, Mr. Carter began, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. This meeting concerns recent irregularities flagged by our internal audit. David cleared his throat, flipping open the folder. We've spent the last week investigating a series of system anomalies, login irregularities, altered spreadsheets, falsified communications. Our findings show that these were not external breaches. They were internal. He turned his laptop slightly, displaying a web of login logs. Specifically, we traced unauthorized activity to devices logged in under two main credentials, Zach Carter's executive assistant and Zach Carter himself. Zach shot upright. That's insane. Anyone could have... David raised a hand. Let me finish. He clicked to the next slide, an activity timeline. Multiple incidents were cross-referenced. Expense report denials flagged under Zach's credentials. Fabricated emails generated from devices assigned to his assistant, but manually logged in using credentials traced back to Zach's executive account. A long, suffocating silence. Zach's bravado cracked wide open. You don't have proof, he hissed, but his voice was shaking now. This is circumstantial. David didn't even flinch. Actually, it's not. He flipped to the next page. Here's the security footage from October 3rd. 4:57 p.m., Zach manually logging into a shared terminal outside the break room. The same terminal used to send the falsified shipment request to the Dalton Group. Zach's face went pale. And Mr. Carter? He didn't yell. He didn't slam the table. He just sighed. The kind of sigh that carried 40 years of building something, only to watch someone reckless try to burn it down in weeks. Zach, Mr. Carter said quietly, I gave you chance after chance. I defended you when the board doubted you. I told myself you just needed time to grow into this. But this... He shook his head. This is theft. Sabotage. An attack on the very people who kept this company alive long before you ever stepped foot in here. Zach opened his mouth, closed it. His hands trembled. Effective immediately, Mr. Carter continued. You are terminated from this company, permanently. Your shares are frozen pending legal review. Security is waiting outside this room. Zach shot up. You can't do this. I'm your son. Mr. Carter's eyes didn't soften. I am your father, but in this room I am the CEO, and this is business. Security entered quietly. Zach looked between them, then at me. And for the first time since this entire nightmare began, he didn't look smug. He looked small, powerless. They escorted him out without a word. When the door closed behind him, the silence was heavy. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mr. Carter turned to me. Ellen, he said, voice softer now but steady. I owe you more than an apology. I owe you the future of this company. He slid a new folder across the table. Inside, an offer. Chief Operating Officer, COO, an executive seat. Full authority over client relations, contracts, and internal operations. Reporting directly to Mr. Carter. No one else. I don't just want you to stay, he said. I want you to help me rebuild this, the right way. I sat there for a long moment, processing it, feeling every emotion swirl together. Vindication, relief, and something else. A quiet kind of pride. I'll do it, I said, but on one condition. His brows lifted. Anything. No more looking the other way, I said. No more protecting people because of who they are. Not family, not friends, not anyone. His gaze didn't waver. Agreed. That afternoon, as I walked back through the office, the energy had shifted entirely. People smiled, not the cautious, guarded smiles from before. Genuine. Grateful. A junior analyst I barely knew gave me a thumbs up as I passed. Someone from HR mouthed, "Thank you." And I realized, this wasn't just my win. It was a win for everyone who had ever been dismissed, underestimated, or pushed aside by someone who thought power was their birthright. I reached my new office, temporary for now, while renovations were underway. I stood for a moment, looking at the blank nameplate on the door, and I smiled. Because this wasn't just a comeback. It was a reminder. You don't get to erase people just because you're holding the pen. I spent 7 years building the very product that turned Velocity Dynamics from a struggling startup into a $500 million tech leader. 7 years of 18-hour days, missed holidays, and countless sleepless nights. I was the chief systems engineer, the person who knew every line of code, every integration point, every single vulnerability. Because I built it. The product? PulseLink. A real-time logistics management system that powered major corporations worldwide. It was the backbone of our company. Without it, Velocity Dynamics would crumble. And yet, standing there in the middle of the conference room, in front of the entire executive team, department heads, and even junior employees, CEO Graham Foster smirked like he had just won the lottery. Congratulations, Kathy. You're terminated, he said, sliding a severance envelope across the polished glass table like it was some kind of prize. I stared at the envelope for a second, then at Graham, that arrogant little grin pulling at the corner of his mouth. Around the table, people shifted uncomfortably. Some avoided eye contact. Others watched eagerly like they were front row to a gladiator fight. Effective immediately, he added with that oily corporate tone. We're restructuring. You know how it is. Yeah, I knew exactly how it was. I also knew something Graham didn't. I calmly stood up, unclipped my badge, and placed it gently on the table. Then, I leaned forward, just enough for my voice to carry, but not enough to seem dramatic. Then I paused, letting the silence hang. You explained to the investors why PulseLink goes offline in exactly 9 minutes. The room froze. Graham blinked. Excuse me? I smiled, the kind of smile that never quite touches the eyes. Check the monitoring dashboard. I'm sure you'll find the countdown running. A nervous shuffle rippled through the room. Someone opened their laptop. Someone else bolted for the door. The HR director's eyes went wide as saucers. And then the panic started. Graham's fake confidence evaporated like mist in sunlight. He stood up so fast his chair skidded backward. What did you do? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Instead, I straightened my blazer, picked up my small cardboard box, the one they so graciously provided for my personal belongings, and walked calmly toward the door. As I reached the doorway, I glanced back just long enough to see the CTO frantically typing, 2 engineers sprinting toward the server room, and Graham jabbing his phone, probably calling anyone, who could fix this. 8 minutes now, I said softly, then stepped into the hallway. Let me back up for a second. This didn't happen overnight. When I joined Velocity Dynamics, it was a scrappy startup operating out of a shared co-working space. There was no product, just an idea on a whiteboard and a desperate CEO pitching investors on promises he couldn't deliver. I was the one who designed PulseLink from scratch. I built the architecture, wrote the critical systems, debugged the endless problems that would have sunk any lesser team. For years, Graham praised me publicly. Kathy's the backbone of this company, he'd say. Couldn't do it without her. Investors loved hearing that. Employees respected it. Until they didn't. About 6 months ago, something shifted. Graham started getting cagey in meetings. My access to financial projections quietly disappeared. Conversations stopped whenever I entered a room. I wasn't naive. I'd seen this before. The classic, we don't need her anymore play. They'd raise a new funding round, hire some hotshot junior engineers on half my salary, then push me out under the guise of restructuring. And last week, I saw the paperwork on the printer. A draft contract offering my job, to some kid named Connor. 2 years out of college, no real-world experience. But hey, he worked for cheaper. That's when I realized Graham wasn't just replacing me. He was erasing me. My name was being scrubbed from the patents, the press releases, and the internal documentation. But what Graham didn't know was that I had seen it coming. And I had prepared. See, PulseLink wasn't just a logistics system. It was a living, breathing network of interconnected systems, one that I had architected to be both resilient and highly sensitive to unauthorized control. 6 months ago, when I saw the signs, I embedded something. A failsafe. Not malicious, let's be clear. Just a protective protocol. If certain credentials were revoked, mine, specifically, the system would assume it was under hostile takeover. And then, automatic lockdown. Not deletion, not damage. Just offline. Everything. Servers, APIs, front ends, back-end processes, the entire infrastructure. Dead. As I walked toward the elevator, I could hear voices shouting behind me. Call it now. What the hell does she mean offline? Is the database backed up? I hit the elevator button and waited. Calm, controlled. Hands steady, heart steady, because Graham had made one catastrophic mistake. He assumed I was just a cog in the machine. What he didn't realize was that I built the machine. And in exactly 7 minutes, he was going to learn just how fragile his empire really was without me. By the time I reached the parking garage, my phone had already buzzed with 7 missed calls, all from unknown numbers. I opened my car door, slid in, and just sat there for a moment, watching the clock on my dashboard. 0000, and right on cue. PulseLink went dark. Not just the internal systems, not just the test servers. No. The entire production network collapsed. Global clients, offline, shipment trackers, gone, warehouse integrations, dead. Velocity Dynamics, the darling of the supply chain industry, just became an expensive brick. I could almost picture it. Graham staring at his screen as error messages multiplied like wildfire. Frantic engineers scrambling to reboot servers only to realize nothing was coming back online. My phone vibrated again. This time, a number I recognized. Rachel, the company's operations director, one of the few decent people there. Someone who, deep down, probably knew this was coming. I let it ring, then sent it straight to voicemail. Not yet. Let them sweat. I drove home. No rush. Picked up coffee on the way, even chatted casually with the barista who had no idea the chaos unfolding a few miles away was my doing, or rather the consequence of their own greed. By the time I stepped through my front door, my inbox was flooded. 12 missed calls from Graham. 6 from Rachel, 2 from the CTO, Mark. A desperate text from an unknown number. Please call. Please, the system is down. We need to talk. I set my phone down, ordered Thai food, opened Netflix, played an old sitcom I'd seen 100 times, the kind where nothing serious ever happens. Because unlike Graham, I wasn't panicking. An hour later, a knock. Loud, insistent. I checked the peephole. Not security, not lawyers, not yet. Rachel. And behind her, slightly out of breath, Mark, the CTO. I opened the door, slowly, deliberately, just wide enough to raise an eyebrow. Oh, fancy seeing you two here. Rachel's face was tense. Kathy, we need to talk, now. Seems sudden. Last I checked, I didn't work for you anymore. Mark rubbed the back of his neck. Look, there's been a misunderstanding. I laughed. Couldn't help it. A misunderstanding? Which part? The firing? The severance envelope? Or the part where you tried to erase my name from my own creation? Rachel sighed, glancing at Mark. Can we come in? Please. I considered it, then stepped aside. Shoes off. They shuffled in awkwardly, like kids called into the principal's office. I sat, crossed one leg over the other, and waited. Mark started. Look, the system. PulseLink. It's, offline. I finished for him. Catastrophic failure, full-stack lockdown. Clients are screaming, investors are probably circling like vultures. Am I getting warm? He swallowed. Dead on. Rachel jumped in. Look, Kathy, we get it. We handled this wrong. Graham, he was impulsive. But this can be fixed. You can fix it. I leaned back. Can I? You have to, Mark blurted. This could destroy the company. Millions in contracts, lawsuits, it's... He stopped, realizing how desperate he sounded. I let the silence hang, long enough to make them uncomfortable. Then finally, I spoke. Let me guess. Graham didn't send you because he's too busy screaming into a phone somewhere, or maybe hiding under his desk. Rachel exchanged a glance with Mark but said nothing, which was confirmation enough. I stood, walked to my desk, opened my laptop, typed a few keys. The dashboard loaded. And there it was. A sea of red alerts. Critical failure. Authentication chain broken. Core operations halted. Node integrity compromised. Mark leaned forward, eyes wide. Wait, you still have access? I smiled. Of course I do. I built the back door 6 years ago. Didn't think I'd ever need it. Guess I was wrong. I turned the laptop toward them. See this? I pointed. The system isn't broken, it's protecting itself. When my credentials were revoked, it assumed hostile takeover. Standard security protocol. If you were paying attention during development meetings, Mark. His face flushed. Rachel buried her face in her hands. So, you can bring it back online, right? Rachel asked quietly. I closed the laptop. That depends. On what? I stood. Walked back to the living room window, looking out at the city skyline. My city. My company, or at least the one that should have been mine. It depends, I said, turning back to face them. On how much you're willing to pay to buy back what you tried to steal. Rachel blinked. You're serious? I crossed my arms. Dead serious. You wanted PulseLink without me? Fine. You found out what that feels like. Now, if you want it back, we negotiate. On my terms. Mark scoffed. This is extortion. I tilted my head. No, Mark, this is business. You taught me that. Silence. Heavy, uncomfortable, full of realization. Rachel finally spoke. What exactly do you want? I smiled, slowly, letting the tension build. Oh, we'll get to that. But first, I think Graham should be here for this conversation. Don't you? Mark opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, then shut it. Because he knew. They both knew. The girl they thought they could discard just became the one holding all the cards. 15 minutes later, the sound of screeching tires echoed from the street. I didn't even need to check. I knew exactly who had just arrived. Sure enough, moments later, a rapid, frantic knock rattled my door. 3 sharp bangs. The kind of knock that screams, "Open this door before I kick it down." I let it sit for a beat. Then 2. Then 3. Then slowly walked over and opened it, just enough to see Graham Foster. Disheveled, flushed, tie loosened, shirt untucked, sweat staining under his collar. The arrogant CEO who had smirked while firing me hours ago now looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, staring at the abyss. You think this is funny? He barked, pushing his way inside without waiting for an invitation. I didn't move. Just let him stomp in like a toddler mid-tantrum. Rachel and Mark stood off to the side, awkward, silent. They knew better than to interrupt. Graham spun toward me, his eyes wild. Turn. It. Back. On. Now I raised an eyebrow. You seem upset, Graham. Stressful day? He jabbed a finger in my face. You're playing with fire, Kathy. This is sabotage. Criminal. You'll never. Careful. I interrupted, voice calm, measured. You're one bad sentence away from making this personal. He froze, jaw tight, breathing heavy. But behind all that bluster, I saw it. Fear. Real fear. Because he knew. He knew exactly how bad this was. I walked over to my desk, opened my laptop, turned it toward him, showing the disaster he was drowning in. 92% of client operations, offline. 137 service-level agreements breached, 24 pending lawsuits incoming. Investor group chat. Is Velocity collapsing? I gestured casually. Look familiar? Graham's fists clenched. You're bluffing. Rachel shook her head. She's not. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I checked. The clients, they're all calling. Our email servers are flooded. Mark added quietly. We had to shut down the client portal. It kept throwing corrupted data. They think we've been hacked. Oh, you've been hacked, all right, I said, folding my arms. By your own arrogance. Graham's face shifted, fury flickering into something smaller, desperate. Fine, he hissed. Name your price. I let the silence drag, watching him squirm. Let it marinate. Then I walked to my bookshelf, pulled out a folder. Not a laptop, not a drive. A folder, paper, analog, untouchable. Here's how this goes, I said, laying it flat on the table. I give you the protocol to restore PulseLink. Clean, no bugs, no backdoors. Full operational integrity. His eyes narrowed. And, I smiled. And I take what was always mine. 50% ownership of all PulseLink patents, retroactive and future. Full reinstatement as CTO, effective immediately. A board seat, permanent. A personal buyout of $15 million for attempted removal and breach of intellectual trust. And one more thing. I leaned forward. A public statement, signed by you, the board, and the investors, acknowledging me as PulseLink's sole inventor and architect. No exceptions, no watered-down PR spin. Graham's mouth fell open. You're insane, that's theft. I laughed. No, Graham, theft is what you tried. What I'm doing, this is restitution. Silence. Mark looked like he wanted to disappear. Rachel didn't even try to argue. Her gaze stayed locked on the table. You don't have a choice, I continued. If PulseLink stays down another hour, Velocity Dynamics is finished. Your stock tanks, investors pull out, clients sue. Your entire empire? I snapped my fingers. Gone. Graham paced, running both hands through his thinning hair. 15 million? You're out of your mind. 15 million, I repeated, is the discount rate, because without PulseLink, this company isn't worth $15. He glared. And if I refuse? I didn't flinch. Then PulseLink stays offline, and you can explain to the New York Times, TechCrunch, and the SEC why your flagship product crashed after you fired its only architect. Oh, and let's not forget the investors' class action lawsuits. Should I forward you their lawyer's contact info now or later? His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Nothing came out. Rachel finally spoke. Quiet, but firm. She's right. Graham whipped his head toward her. Excuse me? She stood, straightened her blazer. You think the investors are going to side with you over the person who saved the company 10 times over? You think they won't know this was you doing? She glanced at me. Or worse, ours. Mark nodded, pale. The logs show you revoked Kathy's credentials. The paper trail's clear. I crossed my arms. Clock's ticking, Graham. He stared at me, pure loathing, pure defeat. But also acceptance, because he knew he was cornered. Fine, he growled. Draft the damn agreement. I smiled. Already did. I pulled a fresh set of documents from the folder and slid them across the table. Signed by me, waiting only for his signature. Graham's hands trembled as he picked up the pen. For a second, I thought he might throw it across the room, but he didn't. He signed. One line, then the next, and the next. When he finished, he shoved the papers back at me. It's done. I leaned forward, voice low, calm, lethal. No, Graham. Now, I'm done. The next morning felt surreal. I wasn't walking into Velocity Dynamics as an employee anymore. Not as someone who could be ordered around, ignored, or erased. I was walking in as something they never imagined I could become. An owner, a board member, their equal. Scratch that. Their superior. As the glass doors slid open, a wave of nervous glances rippled through the lobby. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Coffee cups hovered halfway to mouths. Junior developers stared, whispering behind monitors. Oh, they knew. Word spreads fast when your CEO has to sign away half the company's crown jewel just to keep the lights on. Rachel was waiting by the elevators. She gave me a look. Half amusement, half relief. Never seen Graham that pale before. She smirked. Better get used to it, I replied. Might be his new natural color. The elevator doors opened, the executive floor. The air was thick with tension, the kind you could cut with a knife. I stepped into the boardroom like I owned it. Which, technically, I did. At the far end of the table sat Graham, still CEO, still pretending he had control. But everything about him looked smaller. His tie was straightened this time, his hair combed, but the confidence? Gone. Kathy, he greeted, forcing a strained smile. Welcome back. Thanks, I said, settling into the chair, my chair now, opposite him. Though, technically I didn't come back. I upgraded a few board members, chuckled under their breath, quickly covering it with coughs. I laid the folder on the table, the same one from last night, now stamped, notarized, filed, and distributed to every shareholder. Per the agreement, I said, flipping it open. PulseLink is fully restored. System integrity, confirmed. Client operations, back online as of 6:42 a.m. Investor confidence, stabilized. You're welcome. Graham nodded stiffly. Much appreciated. I tilted my head. Oh, but let's be clear. This isn't charity. This is oversight. I let the word hang, watching him flinch. I turned to the board. As of today, I am reinstated as Chief Technology Officer, with an additional seat on the board and 50% intellectual ownership of PulseLink and all associated derivatives. One of the board members, an older man named Whitaker, cleared his throat. The documents are in order. It's official. Perfect, I smiled. Now let's talk about changes. I tapped my laptop. The big screen behind me flickered to life, showing a slide labeled Internal Threat Audit Report. PulseLink AI Security Logs. Graham's face blanched. He knew what was coming. 6 months ago, I began, PulseLink detected anomalies, unauthorized file accesses, midnight logins, attempts to clone sensitive architecture. The slide changed. Timestamps, IP addresses, usernames. His usernames. A wave of murmurs spread through the boardroom. These aren't external attacks, I continued. These were internal, directed at PulseLink's core repository, specifically by the CEO. Someone gasped. Another muttered, "Unbelievable." Graham jumped to his feet. "This is out of context. I was reviewing—" I held up a hand. "Sit." My voice was calm, firm, absolute. "You don't speak until I finish." He froze. Saturday. First time in 7 years he'd ever obeyed a command from me. Per Section 8 of the shareholder agreement, I continued, any executive engaging in unauthorized IP tampering, sabotage, or behavior deemed a conflict of interest is subject to immediate disciplinary review. I clicked again. The next slide appeared. A simple headline. Recommendation: Removal of CEO Graham Foster. Dead silence. The board chair leaned forward. "Kathy, you're formally recommending termination." "Correction," I said. "I'm demanding it." Graham's eyes darted around the room, desperate for support. But the room had shifted. The board wasn't looking at him anymore. They were looking at me. Whitaker sighed. Given the evidence and the situation, he glanced at the others. Heads nodded. It's not just Kathy's decision. It's the board's now. Another member, Elena, chimed in. He jeopardized our core product, our investors, our reputation. This isn't just reckless. It's grounds for dismissal. Graham slammed his hands on the table. "You can't do this. I built this company." I met his gaze. "No, Graham. I built it. You just signed the checks." The vote was unanimous. Effective immediately, Graham Foster is removed as CEO of Velocity Dynamics. Security was called. He stood, trembling, furious. And for a moment, I thought he might lunge at me. But he didn't. He just glared. That same glare bullies give when they realize the kid they pushed too far finally hit back. "This isn't over," he hissed as security let him out. I smiled. "Oh, Graham, it absolutely is." I turned back to the board. Calm, composed. But inside? Oh, inside I was electric. "Let's begin," I said. "There's a company to rebuild. Properly this time." The news spread faster than wildfire. By noon, every desk in Velocity Dynamics knew. Graham's gone. Kathy's back. But not just back. She's running the place now. Did you see the security walk him out? Unreal. Even the junior developers, the same ones who used to avoid eye contact when Graham passed, were openly gossiping now, peeking over monitors, whispering in the hallways. I wasn't sure if it was respect, fear, or just disbelief. Maybe a mix of all three. But I didn't have time to care. There was work to do. Real work. The first order of business? Damage control. The client losses from yesterday's outage were already piling up. Legal was in a frenzy, drafting apologies and revised contracts. Customer support lines were lit up like a Christmas tree. But as bad as that was, it was fixable. Clients weren't angry because PulseLink failed. They were angry because the people running it were incompetent. Now that problem had a solution. By 2 p.m., I was in the war room. Glass walls, whiteboards everywhere, and monitors tracking system recovery metrics. Status report, I said, looking at the engineering leads. One stood. Core systems are stable. APIs are backup. Database integrity confirmed. No data loss. Client portals? 87% functional. The remaining are minor UI bugs. Nothing critical. I nodded. Good. Push it to 100 by end of day. Then I turned to the operations manager. Legal notices? She sighed. 3 clients are threatening lawsuits, but after hearing Graham's gone, 2 already backed down. The 3rd is on the fence. Let me guess. I tapped my pen. Centurion Freight. She blinked. Yes, how did you... Because I built this company, I said, not even trying to hide the edge in my voice. I know every client better than Graham ever did. Just as we were finally stabilizing, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Blocked caller ID. I debated ignoring it, but something in my gut told me not to. Kathy speaking. A smooth voice answered. Male, polished, too polished. Ms. Reyes, we should talk. Who is this? Call me Vincent. I represent interests. Interests, I echoed. You'll need to be more specific. A short pause. I'm authorized to discuss a potential acquisition. I frowned. Of what? Velocity Dynamics? Not for sale. Oh, no. The voice chuckled. Not the company. PulseLink. My stomach tightened. Not interested. It's a generous offer. Our client is prepared to pay 9 figures. I stood, pacing toward the window. Tell your client that PulseLink isn't for sale. Not today. Not ever. The voice remained calm. You might want to reconsider. This isn't a friendly request. There it was. The shift in tone. The threat underneath the velvet. Was that supposed to scare me? I asked, turning from the window. Because it's adorable. Another pause. Think it over, Ms. Reyes. You'll be hearing from us again. Soon. Click. The line went dead. I stood there for a moment processing, then immediately opened my laptop. Logged into the PulseLink security console. Ran an audit. Nothing. Clean, no breaches, no anomalies. Not yet, I muttered. But if someone wanted PulseLink badly enough to offer 9 figures and make threats when that failed, this wasn't just some random opportunist. This was organized, strategic, calculated. And if there's one thing I knew from building PulseLink, threats that escalate don't stop. Rachel walks in. She paused, noticing my expression. Something's wrong. I nodded. Very. I summarized the call. Her face shifted from confusion to concern to something sharper. You think they're serious? She asked. I didn't answer immediately, just stared at the PulseLink dashboard, the system that had become both my greatest achievement and, now, my biggest target. I think, I finally said, that we just stepped onto a much bigger playing field, and the rules just changed. My inbox chimed. A new email. No sender. No subject. Just one line in the body. Check your back door. TikTok. My blood ran cold. I immediately pulled up the PulseLink server logs, scrolled, scanned, and there it was. A ping. External. Tiny. Almost undetectable. But there. Someone had found it. The back door I built. The same one that brought Graham to his knees. Someone was knocking. The moment I saw that ping, the unauthorized access attempt, my hands went cold. Check your back door. TikTok. It wasn't subtle. It was a message, a warning, a countdown. I slammed my laptop shut, stood, and locked the conference room door. Rachel blinked. Kathy, what is it? Someone found it, I said, my voice flat. The failsafe. The one I used against Graham. Her face drained of color. Can they use it against us? I shook my head. Not yet. Not unless they have the right credentials. But if they're knocking, they're already closer than they should be. Who? She asked. Who has the resources to even find it? I stared at the PulseLink dashboard. All systems were stable, for now. But it felt like looking at a calm ocean, knowing there was a tsunami just over the horizon. Someone bigger than a corporate rival, I said. This isn't just business. This is organized. Strategic? Professional. Rachel crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. They want PulseLink. No, I corrected. They want control of PulseLink, of me, of the data, of everything. I pulled open the emergency operations terminal, something only I had access to. A hidden layer beneath PulseLink's main infrastructure, typed in a string of commands. Initiate, full system lockdown protocol. Confirm Y or N. My fingers hovered. Locking it would prevent anyone, even legitimate users, from touching core systems, but it would also cripple the company temporarily. Kathy, Rachel said, watching me. If you do this, it's gonna hurt. Bad. I nodded. Yeah. But not as bad as letting them in. I hit Y lockdown initiated. PulseLink's core dimmed. Not down, but sealed. Fortified. Nothing in, nothing out, like slamming every vault door shut at once. My phone buzzed. Another blocked call. I declined it, then another, and another. An email appeared seconds later. No subject. Just one sentence. Wrong move. Now we escalate. The PulseLink firewall lit up like fireworks. Port scans, injection attempts, DDoS floods, credential stuffing. They were throwing everything at us. And this wasn't a random hacker in a basement. This was methodical, industrial-grade cyber warfare. Jesus, Rachel muttered, watching the attack map flare up with incoming threats from 6 countries. This is bad, she said. Really bad. It's not bad, I replied, typing rapidly. It's an opportunity. She frowned. An opportunity? Yeah, I said. They've shown their hand. Now, we trace it. I spun up PulseLink's deep trace protocols, the same AI-driven analysis that had caught Graham's midnight intrusions. But this time, I wasn't tracking a clumsy CEO. This time, it was professionals, and that made them predictable. The AI flagged a pattern, repeated routing through a specific server cluster in Zurich, followed by a bounce to Singapore, then to Buenos Aires. But Zurich was the weak link. A private cloud server leased by a shell corporation. A shell corporation registered to Vanguard Strategic Holdings. I blinked. No way. Rachel leaned over. Who's that? I turned to her. A private equity firm. A massive one. They've been quietly buying up cybersecurity companies for years, trying to consolidate the market. So, they wanted PulseLink? She asked. I shook my head. Number they wanted me out. So they could own it. Control it. License it globally. At their terms, not ours. I kept digging. The AI flagged a document. Poorly scrubbed metadata. An internal memo. Objective. Acquire PulseLink by any means. Phase 1. Remove creator. Phase 2. Force acquisition under distressed conditions. Holy, Rachel whispered. They backed Graham, I said, realizing it as the pieces clicked into place. He wasn't just greedy. He was leveraged. A new notification popped. Trace complete. Identity confirmed. Vincent Carter, Director of Cyber Assets, Vanguard Strategic Holdings. There you are, I whispered. I opened a secure channel, not through PulseLink, but through a secondary protocol I had built years ago. A dead man's switch. Loaded the compiled logs, the attack traces, the memo, the financial records. Sent it to 3 places simultaneously. 1. The FBI's Cybercrime Division. 2. The SEC. 3. TechCrunch, Wired, and Forbes. Let's see how they like being exposed, I muttered. The moment the package went out, the attack slowed, then stopped. Dead. A minute later, my phone rang. This time, not a blocked number. It was Vincent. I answered. Kathy Reyes speaking. A pause. Then his voice, cold, measured, us but strained. That was unnecessary. No, Vincent. What was unnecessary was thinking you could strong-arm me. Or pulse-link. This isn't over. Oh, I think it is, I said, smiling. Check the news in 5 minutes. And maybe check with your legal team. Goodbye, Vincent. I hung up. By sundown, the headlines were everywhere. Massive cyber takeover attempt foiled. PulseLink creator exposes private equity sabotage. SEC launches investigation into Vanguard Holdings. FBI Cybercrime Division confirms data theft, extortion attempts. Velocity Dynamics stock didn't crash. In fact, it surged. Investors realized the problem wasn't PulseLink. It was the parasites trying to own it. As for me, my name wasn't just on the PulseLink patents now. It was everywhere. The architect, the savior, the one who didn't just build the system, but defended it against everything. Technology is only as secure as the person who builds it. Ownership matters. Boundaries matter. Knowing your worth matters. They tried to erase me, tried to take what I built. Instead, they taught me just how unstoppable I really am.